Greetings. This is Pat Courtney Strong, and I'm here today with George Woodbury. We are two of the partners in the NYSERDA-funded Mid-Hudson Streetlight Consortium. We're here today to record this webinar for interested bidders for the Mid-Hudson Streetlight Consortium RFP that was released on December 4th. Was for LED streetlights, or as we put it specifically, request for proposals, initial maintenance, and energy efficiency conversion for municipal streetlight systems. The lead municipality for this opportunity is the town of Red Hook in Dutchess County. We have approximately 15 other communities as participants, and then we've been working with a group of upwards of 40 communities altogether, and some subset of them will come forward as piggybackers over the next year. So we're delighted to have had interest among contractors, but we want to make sure that we reach everyone should be reached. So that's the reason for recording. I'm going to turn it over to George Woodbury now. If you have questions on this, provide contact information, but in agreement with the town of Red Hook, you'll send your questions and comments to Ann Conway of the town of Red Hook, and I will provide her contact information. She will in turn answer the question town can, and then if there are other questions that need to come to us, she'll immediately forward to us. And we've been getting a fair number of queries, and we're able to answer them within a few hours. I'll turn it over to you. George is with LightSmart Consulting of North Carolina.
Pat. The main reason I want to go through this is because New York, for the most part, up until recently, the only communities that were able to own and operate their own streetlights tended to be in Con Ed service territory. But as a result of the passage of 70A, this opportunity has now been opened up to the entire state of New York. So our concern is that there won't be a lot of contractors that are experienced in providing these services. And I've been using this form of a contract now for over 17 years. So I wanted to share our experience in other parts of New England with you and help you in your preparation. It's important to understand that this is not a low bid contract award. This is based on best value. So it is a combination of your skill sets and your pricing that will only determine who is selected. The project is designed is that the communities will acquire the asset from the utility, and in doing that, they will sign an operating agreement or purchase and sale agreement that has certain requirements in it. They can audit of their streetlight system, and using that audit, they will complete a design and select the materials that they believe would best meet their design criteria, and they will procure those materials. They also set up any financing to finance the project and to pay for the work that's going to be done. And they will issue the purchase order for those materials and have them delivered to the town for a joint inventory with the selected vendor who's going to do the install. The equipment would be turned over to the selected contractor, which is what the purpose of this RFP is to find that contractor, and the equipment would be installed by that contractor, and then any maintenance that may be required on the system for the next 3 years would be performed by that contractor. So what we're looking for is the go-to company that each of these towns will use to do the install and then to have maintenance performed as needed over the next 3 years. The contractor's responsibilities in this case will be to jointly inventory the received materials and to take responsibility for them. Now, the town is not going to supply miscellaneous materials. So, for example, when you go out to install a fixture, if you find the mast arm in bad shape and needs to be replaced, the wiring within the mast arm needs to be replaced, or other conditions such as that, then those materials would come through you to use for that purpose. So you would stock those kinds of materials, but the fixtures, the controls, the fuses that are required to do the conversion work would be supplied to you by the town, and you would take responsibility for those. Typically, the way that works is the town will provide you a space where you trailer or whatever you want, store the materials that you're going to need in that town, and give you a place to operate out of. Police and flagmen, these are pass-through costs. We do not need you to estimate the cost of flagmen as part of your proposal. The purpose of that is to encourage the towns to minimize the requirement for flagmen. We found this to be very successful in other New England towns. It also allows then for you to operate much faster, which obviously improves both the speed with which we get the work done, but also it reduces your costs and allows you all to make a better profit. Responsibility around dig safe, if that's a requirement, is your responsibility. You would make those contacts before you did any of the work. And with the utility that is required is the responsibility of the contractor, and also compliance with the operating agreement that the town executes is also the responsibility of the contractor. As part of this project, there is some coordination required. There is a requirement to weekly notify utility of the work and where you're going to be operating. So it would be your responsibility to schedule your work and to keep the utility informed, and to provide a copy of whatever information you supply to the utility to the town that you're working in. That's referred to in the operating agreement as a notice of construction. There's a report that has to be done which tells every change that's going to be made. That is the responsibility of the town, and will be done as part of the design conversion process. So you won't have to provide information to the utility, but you provide your operating schedule and contact information, et cetera, to the utility, so they know where you are and how to get in touch with you. Maintenance basically is done on a time and materials basis, and the details of how you're going to do that will be worked out with each community. Now, right now, the document says that you have to complete repairs in 5 working days of the time that you're notified. However, subject to negotiations with the town. So, for example, you may have a town that is pretty distant. You may want to work out an arrangement where you're not going to send somebody out there for a single light repair, but you're going to wait until there's a certain number that need to be repaired before you send someone out. These are details that would be worked out in your final contract with the town. But for the purposes of this bill that you're going to submit, just assume that you have 5 working days, and you'll have to have adequate staff to be able to meet that requirement. The limit for insurance. It is in Section 5.3 of the operating agreement, and the minimums are $1 million for workman's comp, $3 million for general liability, and $10 million per occurrence for vehicles. And as a part of that, you will be required to provide identification not just for yourself, but also for the utility, and name the town as an additional insured party. Now, in that regard, again, although we're making a central selection here on behalf of the 19 or so communities, 18 communities that have signed up as participants, you went into separate individual contracts with each community. So there won't be one large contract that you're working under, but rather individual contracts. Timing. May still not acquired their asset from the utility. Obviously, haven't done their audits. They haven't done their designs. So it's work that's going to be stretched out over a fairly significant period of time. It's not something that's going to be starting in January, but communities may be able to take over their lights sometime in January. But expect it's going to be a process where each community has to go through the negotiations. They have to file with the Public Service Commission if the purchase price is above a certain level. That has to be done before they can actually acquire the assets. So it's not like all 19 communities are going to come online and you got to deal with all 19 simultaneously. You can expect them to come in individual units over time. The purpose of this RFP is for us to identify a qualified contractor and to select someone that we believe will bring the best value to these communities. There are certain minimum qualifications that your workers have to meet. They have to be OSHA 1910.269 and also have to be qualified to operate in proximity to 600 volts. Now, the current documents from Central Hudson require that they be linemen. We are aware that there are some exceptions that have been granted to that. We are looking into the details and also trying to determine if we can use electricians, which was our original intent, and we thought we had worked out an agreement to that end, but now we're finding that that may not be the case. So we're digging into it, and we'll get answers back to you as soon as possible. But for now, assume that you will need to use linemen, or you need to have some arrangement to be able to use your people with the utility company. I think one approach that some have taken is they are signatories both to IBEW and to the Linemen's Union, and that may be acceptable, but we'll have to iron that out. If you're aware that you are allowed to do this and that your people can work on this equipment, by all means, we encourage you to submit a proposal. That, as Pat mentioned, over time, that we've structured this so communities can piggyback. This allows multiple communities to join in and essentially gives you a hunting license, so to speak. You know, if you win this contract, you certainly could reach out to other communities and persuade them to go ahead and move forward, take advantage of this opportunity. One of the reasons we do that is because we believe that it's very important that you establish a relationship with each of these communities. They believe that they're getting high quality service and that you're a trusted contractor. That way, when other communities check with them and say, hey, how's this going? They can say, yep, it's excellent. This is a really good contractor, and that'll, of course, help you with getting them to piggyback and allow you to expand your business. And one of the things that is important, if you look in any community, when town does this, one of the immediate reactions of the citizens is, gee whiz, you can't even fix the potholes. How are you going to fix the street lights? You know, you do what you already do better. So that's the typical reaction that you may get. And when Miss looks out her window and sees a truck out there repairing a street light, paying attention to the fact that the guy did the best quality work of any guy in the world, all she sees is he's wearing a tattered shirt and his truck looks like it needs a bath. So one of the things that's important to us is that your people and your equipment present a high quality appearance, and that your interaction with the public is very respectful, and that's a good impression that's an important aspect of this. Call centers. We have a call center so that we and the customers can contact you and notify you of issues. That can be done in a variety of different ways. Companies have call centers that are connected. Require, though, that it not be an answering machine. You need a call service where someone actually answers the phone and talks to the individual. Otherwise, what you're going to get is somebody calls in and leaves a message that the light in front of their house is out and they expect someone to come fix it. Then they won't tell you where they live. They won't tell you what the plumber is, and you'll on a search to try to figure this out. So we have found that by the individual, you can get enough information from them so that we then know where the repair needs to be made. One I work with, Bishop Electric, their service would record the phone call, would tell the information, and then in turn would contact the individual who was on call that night. The call, and then that individual would return the call back to me. I was checking on their call center operation. Now, all of these things, if you don't have these available or don't have these set up already, and you don't want to enter into the expense of setting these things up, getting the insurance and so on and so forth, you then need to demonstrate in what you present to us your ability to do that. So you should have already made contact with the company that you would do this with and have that information available to us. You should have a certificate of insurability that you submit, and then once we have made our selection, if you're selected, then prior to awarding you a contract, you would be required to put those things into place, and they have to be satisfactory. But we need to incur an expense in order to submit a proposal. Just sure that we understand that you have that ability, and we're confident that you have that ability. In completion, Pat, you could scroll up a little bit, if you will, to the next one. Fine. Keep going. There we go. Submission. You see it at the bottom. Move that on up. Thank you. I've had to do this myself. I've been on your side of the writing table, you will. I've also been a DPW director, so I understand how this is done. What I would recommend you do is document thoroughly with a highlighter in your hand and highlight everywhere it says you're expected to do something, you're expected to know something, you're expected to have certain capabilities, and highlight those things so that you make sure that you address them. There's also in the document a set of criteria under which you're going to be scored by people that review your submission. Make sure that you address those in detail. I had people submit something that said, oh yes, I'm qualified, I have lots of experience, and that's all they told us. You don't back that up with additional information so that we're confident that what we're saying is in fact true, then you're wasting your time and our time. So it takes to put proposals. Obviously, once you've done one, it can be used over and over and over again and to potential opportunities. But take time and do it right. Your applications. You may have had the experience of maintaining a municipal street lighting system. Recognize that maintaining a street light is not complicated. In fact, I can do it. I'm not an electrician, but it's pretty straightforward and pretty simple. But you've done other things that are similar. You've worked for someone where you had to have people on call. That's fine. That's what you detail. Maybe took care of parking lot lights for a Lowe's or a Walmart or somebody, where you had to go and repair the lights. Again, that's fine. Maybe you did a project where you had to install parking lot lights or outdoor lighting. Again, all of these, just put it and explain it. If you have anything else that you've done that you think is similar, that's what you're going to describe, and do so in sufficient detail that you demonstrate to us that you're going to be more than capable of managing the municipal streetlight system. The concerns, of course, are safety, both for your workers and for the public. So it's good if you have demonstrated ability to work in a roadway where you have to put out cones and make sure that your workspace is safe and that the public is properly alerted to your presence and we don't have a conflict. So again, that's all of these things. Bid bond. And I'm going to walk you through how you do your pricing. Your bid bond will be based on a total comparative price. When you use proposal, your price is separate. It's in a separate sealed envelope, and there's nothing else in there. Everything else, your bid bond, your insurance certificate or eligibility certificate, your statement of tax, non-collusion, and so on and so forth, and your qualifications and your proposal, backup information you want to supply goes in the other envelope. Now, also going to ask you, and that envelope needs to be complete because we're going to open it up and check to make sure that you submitted everything you're supposed to as for this proposal, except your bid. If you've put stuff in with the price, we're not going to even open the prices until after we've evaluated your proposal. Price is the last thing we open, so don't put anything in with the pricing sheets. We need to see, evaluate your company. We're going to ask you to provide us an electronic version of both your proposal and your pricing. Now, those can both be on the same disk, but they need to be two separate files so that we can leave one unopened and still open the other and transmit it to folks that are going to be evaluating you as part of this process. So you follow those instructions. The next now is to walk you through the price proposal, but before I do that, I thought I would mention a couple things that will be helpful to you. I've done since 2010 probably 200,000 conversions in New England and elsewhere, 13 states and 2 countries. Ours is that a worker can put up about 25 lights a day unless there's a big requirement for flagmen, and then your flagmen need to be trained so that your worker can move fast. We typically have only one person in the bucket truck who does this. We typically start and do an entire street. The streets are areas that are prone to high traffic volumes during certain times of the day, are normally avoided during those times of the day. We would put crews in nearby residential areas to work, and then once the appropriate hour arrives to be able to work on the main thoroughfares, we can shift over and do that. Or alternatively, some contractors prefer to do those arterials after hours. And the requirement by some communities, again, those are details you work out at your contract with that community. So next, let us to the pricing sheet. Let me explain how this works. So the pricing sheet is broken down into 3 primary sections. The section deals with the energy efficiency conversion, which is the removal of the existing Cobra head fixture and the replacement of with the new LED. and photo control and the installation of a fuse if it's required. And the equipment would be supplied to you. Our expectation is that if your worker goes up there and sees that the internal wiring is extremely brittle, in addition, the mast arm is in a condition and needs to be replaced, the equipment is in too close a proximity to the high voltage, the primary wires, which could be up to 33 or even 69,000 volts, then in that case, the worker would bypass that and pass the information back to someone that they move on and do the next light. The goal, of course, is to put up as many LEDs as possible, and then separate crews that would come back and take care of the issues that were identified by the people doing the installation. That results in getting the project done as quickly as possible and getting to the savings which are created by the conversion process. This first pricing involves two different items. The first one, it says, is labor with no commissioning. Commissioning is in the event a community chooses to use intelligent controls, in which each control has a MAC address or an IPv6 address, which is a label, and that information has to be recorded. So it involves the recording of that information along with the pole number, so associate that control with that particular light. It's a fairly quick process. If a community is going to be doing controls, we undoubtedly will set this up so that it can be done using an iPad and a barcode reader. And the way it typically is done is the worker arrives at the site, he set up, he takes the fixture out, he takes the photo control out, he records the barcode with the barcode reader, and he then puts photo control onto the fixture, gets a bucket, and installs it on the mast arm. What we've learned over time is that the photo control, intelligent photo control, sometimes have to take a bit of force to push down against the gasket to twist and lock in place. We've had problems with contractors who didn't twist lock them, and as a result they would vibrate loose and then lose communication. So sure that that's done properly. Your guys may need to get a little bit of training. Some of the crews take out these winches, if you will, that has a strap that you use to hold the photo control, base in place. Keep it from turning when you're rotating the photo control. So a trick to make it easier. It's always easier to do it when you're not wearing your gloves, which you can do while you're on the ground. Once you get in the air, so your guys need to be wearing gloves. So the A-11 is labor without the commissioning. It's just a standard photo control, installing the fixture. The A-12 is with the added step of having to record the information about the location and the photo control IP address. Now, very often we don't see a difference in price. Contractors find that it only takes a minute to do it, and that's the kind of the way they do the work anyway. So, if you believe that there's added labor and you want to have a higher price for that, you would include that there. Second one. Section B deals with responding to emergencies and your hourly rate. The emergency response. And a driver plows into a pole and knocks the pole down. Notified, you're required to report to that site within hours, and there may need to be an adjustment to that if you happen to be located a long distance, but those are details that are worked out with the individual community. The question is that you're going to respond to the site, you're going to render it safe, you're going to secure equipment that belongs to the town. That's the end of your responsibility at that stage. The utility will replace the pole, and at some future date, you will reinstall the fixture if it's serviceable, or put up a new one, and the utility will make the final connection. That's what the emergency response, and you'll provide a fixed price to make a call, such as that, which includes your materials, your truck, your mileage, and all that sort of thing. Then rate would be doing this during normal business hours, a emergency response crew. So you're going to have both an after-hours rate and a regular hours rate. And those listed, and you're going to show that. So that's an all-in price that says if you go out and do this, this is how much I'm going to charge you, and it's a fixed number. And then you'll get down into section C. What we've done here is we've kind of assumed certain quantities of different tasks, and then ask you to price the task and then multiply it times the quantities that we've indicated to arrive at a final proposal price. Now, it's very important to understand these are not additive. We out with your labor rates, and they're labeled, as you can see, C1-1 is a journeyman, electrician, or lineman, their rate per hour, and so on and so forth. Now, go ahead and scroll down, Pat. So we have overtime rates, we have your per bucket rates, and so on and so forth. This station is used for us to be able to estimate the cost of work, and it also governs, let's say you go out to do something, and you'll see further down, individual items that we're asking you to price, but say you get out there and there's additional work that needs to be done, you need to stay an extra hour, it's your hourly rate that would be added in there, but additive. So, for example, say you have a service call, the item C112. It's called to replace a 35 to 150 watt bulb, and this is assuming you're maintaining an existing high pressure sodium system. We use the standard photocell, so it's labor plus material. So you go out there and you discover that the wiring within the mast arm is in bad shape and needs to be replaced. You add C112, and if you go further down, there's a listing for replacing wire within a 2 is complete installation of 6-foot mast arm with internal wiring. There's a price per foot of wire below. But what I had was somebody who went out and said, okay, well, I replaced the bulb, and this is how much I charge for that. And, oh, I went out and at the same time I replaced the photocell, so I'm going to charge for those 2 items. Doesn't work that way. You get to add a little extra if you're out there and you do multiple tasks. So don't try later on stack this stuff. What you're going to do is you're going to complete the unit pricing for items C1 through C11 through C141, and then you use those prices to complete the section down below. So there's a section called Total Comparative Price Components where you carry down the pricing from up above, and then we provide you quantities, and you use those quantities times the unit price to arrive at the final bid price. contractors who assume because we're doing something 12 times, might get a lower rate for that. The time's over 3 years, so we chose as if they're individual events, and you should too. So it doesn't pay you to reduce the price because you assume that you might be going out and doing this 12 times all at once. That's not the case. So take the prices from up above, and you multiply them times the quantities down here in this section, and then tally them all up, and it results in your final total comparative bid price. Now, the items for which we didn't give a separate line. So if you go down where it has some following, Pat. There we go. So in this line, it says sum the following C1-14 through C126, then C128, 30, 31, 33, 34, 36, and 38, and then apply that times the quantity. In this case, it shows as 2. So you add all of those up, those individual items up, and multiply them times 2 and put a price there. So that's how that works. Add that becomes your total comparative price, price, and it's also the basis of your 5% bid bond. Bid bond works is once we've made a selection, bid bonds will be returned to the firms that were not selected, but they be required as part of your contract to initiate a percent performance bond with each individual community. Now, we're not going to do one major performance bond, but rather individual performance bonds. Now, how you do it is up to you. Where you add communities, you just have a single bid bond, but as the community's names added in the dollar the cost to you as you add additional communities may or may not change. But each community would have an individual bid bond that's available to them. So if for any reason there was a problem, they would have the ability to that bond to solve the problem and pay for any costs incurred or losses that they incurred as a result of your work. So again, you're reminded that this section, the pricing section, is all that's in the price proposal envelope, and all your qualifications and everything else that's required in this document needs to be in the other envelope, along with your certificate of eligibility for insurance and your certificates of non-collusion, of tax, and so on and so forth. So make sure your missions are complete. Pass we need to cover?
Well, I think you did a great job of summing it up. We will probably put this out with some FAQs based on what we've seen and heard coming into the town of Red Hook. To reiterate what George said, this contract does not include procurement of lights. The municipalities will be doing that in a separate action. And it seems to us it bears repeating that this is not one single contract opportunity, but rather the contract will have the ability to contracts with multiple communities. And question has numerous times. So those are the key points that I wanted to make, George. And we want to state again that we're fielding inquiries on a regular basis. Need to come to Ann Conway of the town of Red Hook. That's ACOWAY @redhook.org. The proposal is due at 2 p.m. on Thursday, January 11th. And other than that, we're just happy to have had your attention for this little over a half hour, and we hope you'll submit a proposal.
A couple other quick points. what you get from each town is going to be a detailed list that says by pole number and address and street name the equipment to be installed. One of the things that we try to do when we work with these communities is to keep these designs simple, so that the way I like to do it, if you're on a particular street that is of a certain class, everyone on that street is going to be the same. I also like to select fixtures that have the ability to be internally adjusted so that the wattage of the light can be changed by an internal setting. Tech, for example, has internal to the fixture 4 different colored plugs, and depending on which plug you connect to, it's just a small connection, it determines the output of the light. So, for example, let's say you're going down Elm Street and there's 15 fixtures on Elm Street, and somewhere along that road there's a school with a crosswalk, and we designate that the lighting at that crosswalk needs to be brighter. You would say have an internal adjustment in the fixture, it's the same fixture. So what we don't want is for your guys to have to go out, or gals to have to go out with different style of fixtures, and when they get there, figure out which one goes on that pole, and oh gee, I didn't bring the right one. We try to keep this as simple as possible, both because you go faster, and it's a lot simpler later when we're doing maintenance, not having to stock a large amount of equipment on shelf. Once project is finished, part of the project will be to order sufficient spare materials, because there's typically out-of-the-box failure rate, and you'll be responsible for the first 90 days for any warranty replacement, so that needs to be considered as part of your cost. These numbers are really small. In the town of the city of Providence, where we installed 17,000 LEDs in the first year, we had a 3% failure rate, and our out-of-the-box failure rate was less than 0.5%. So those are some numbers that you can expect. You'll be responsible if a fixture is not working in the first 90 days to go back out and get it working, and that's at no added cost to the community. So we expect a fully functional system to be the town when the project is ended. Because of who stores the replacement service will be up to you and the town to work out, but normally they are kept at the location in the town where you have access and can get to it. What the towns typically won't want is for you to have it in a central warehouse where if there's a problem, you go out of business or whatever. Don't know which is their equipment, and they don't want to be getting into other towns as to whose is who. So typically it's kept separate, and it's kept by the town. But again, these are details you can work out with each participant and do it to everybody's satisfaction. So thanks for your time this morning, and Pat, I give it back to you.
Thank you, Joe. Again, please just reach out to us through the town of Red Hook, and we'll get you answers to your questions. Thanks very much.